this is Deborah at Hello My Garden, and I've been tagged by Hardcore Gardener. So let's get started. Okay, so the first question is, how long have you had your allotment? And I assume that's my garden. This particular property we're on right now, we've been here for about 4 years now. It's on about an acre, and we're in a city limit of a small suburb within an hour of Raleigh and Durham, North Carolina. Prior to that, we lived on a 5-acre place a little bit further out in the country, close to where I am now, about 20 minutes from where I am now. And that, while having a lot of land there, it just really wasn't conducive to gardening. There was a lot of red clay. It was very much rough. The road was just too difficult for me to get easily back and forth to work. So we chose to move here, which is less land, but it's actually more conducive to gardening here than it was there. Okay, so where did I learn about gardening? John, who's not in this video because he's a little bit more busy today, but we're both hobby gardeners, and we learned by when we were young by various means. Me, I was interested in gardening. I think I started around 5 or 6, and it was even prior to my parents having gardens. I remember really thinking that it was more of a habitat for the little critters that I would catch, notably frogs and bugs and stuff. And I lived in an apartment, and there was like a little 4x4 tiny little front yard that I would catch frogs in, and I'd put them in there, and I guess I felt it, that my young self felt that I needed a garden there for them, so I planted plants, and I think they were vegetables. I'm pretty sure they were vegetables. And so that's really what I guess got me interested in gardening, but it's really been an off and on thing. I've been most consistent gardening now for this 4 years since we've been on this property, but back in high school I used to grow container fruit trees in California. I grew up in California, in Southern California. So at that time I used to grow container, in high school I grew container gardens when I lived in an apartment, and when I was younger than that, for a short time we lived in a house and we had a garden in the backyard. That backyard garden was with my grandmother and my mother. So really off and on through the years I would have various gardens and container gardens and that sort of thing. Even at that 10-acre, or the 5-acre place, I didn't have a garden outside, but I did have container gardens, because again it was really kind of an untamed sort of property. Okay, so do I plant a winter garden? Yes, we plant a winter garden. We have a bunch of tunnels, and we have a greenhouse. Right behind me is our container garden tunnel, or hoop house, or whatever you want to call it, and we got a various bunch of kales and Swiss chards and stuff like that back here that we like to grow in these containers. We also have more greens under hoop house. We have carrots, we have garlic, and we have another green hoop house bed. And then we have the more tropical plants like the ashtaba and the Malabar spinach, and we have a cayenne pepper in there, and some herbs, a whole lot of stuff, warm weather stuff in the greenhouse. What has been our biggest success this year? I don't know if I wouldn't call it a success, but to me, growing the Okinawan sweet potato, because that's my favorite sweet potato, and I was really excited about it, and the slips were hard for me to get. So I only had 3 slips. I had one of them died, so I ended up with 2, but the harvest was pretty good, and I had that in a video just recently. Very excited about that Okinawan sweet potato. So that was our biggest success this year. What was our biggest gardening disaster? I would say the first year here we had a garden in the ground, so we tilled the earth and stuff, but the Bermuda grass here grows, the crabgrass, Bermuda grass, whatever you want to call it, is so weedy here that it just was so difficult to keep that garden weeded from that grass. It took over everything, so we turned to raised beds. So I would say that was our biggest garden disaster here. And if I wanted to specify this year as my biggest garden disaster, I would have to say it was the golden berries, or the Cape gooseberries, because while I grew a lot of them, there were some little worms that got in there, and they would always go through the husk, so by the time the berry was ripe, they would be gone. A little worm would eat them up. And I do not use any sort of pesticides or chemicals here in the property. My only removal is by manual removal, and since they went in through the husk, I couldn't really tell they were even in there. So I finally, by the time the weather turned and those bugs were on their way, we got frost, so there was a whole lot of berries that just went to waste, and we didn't get to harvest even one this year. So that's our biggest disaster this year, and I probably won't be growing them again for that reason. Let's see, do we have a tried and true crop? I think that's going to have to be kale. That's the one we use the most and we grow a lot of, so kale is going to have to be our tried and true crop that we always grew. Oh, I want to step back to also our winter garden question again, if you don't mind. I'll go back to that one. We also grow carrots in the winter, and that we've found that they're much sweeter in the winter, that they're not even worth growing here to us in the fall or summer. I'm sorry, in the spring or summer. We only grow them in the fall through winter. They're much more sweet here. So that's also part of our winter garden. Let's see, what's the next question? Are you planning to try anything new next year? Absolutely. I'm not quite sure what things yet. I know there's going to be a fushimi pepper that I've read about. It's supposed to be a nice, sweet Japanese pepper. And I still am in the process of thumbing through my new catalogs, so I haven't decided quite what new things I'm going to grow yet, but there's definitely going to be something new. I'd love to try new vegetables. And let's see, how do we preserve our crops? We primarily dehydrate our crops, our peppers and our tomatoes, and most of the time we do kale chips too in the dehydrator. So we mostly dry, but we like to eat our vegetables fresh. The greens, we blend those in smoothies every day, and so I usually take a jar of that to work with me. And let's see, what's the next question? Let's see, what is our favorite dish or meal we like to make from our garden? Again, kind of like the previous question, we blend, or we make smoothies out of our greens, and that's our predominant food item or the way we use our greens or veggies from the garden. And we also really love the dehydrated tomatoes, almost more than fresh. We like we eat those dehydrated tomatoes as snacks. Okay, so I think that's about it. Oh, and I guess the sweet potatoes too. I like to either bake the sweet potatoes when it's wintertime, because that really makes them the sweetest. But during the summer when it's hot and I don't really want to turn the oven on, I use a Smart Pot electric, pressure cooker. So I cook those in the pressure cooker. It just takes 10 minutes and then maybe about a half an hour to release. And while they're kind of more soft in that style, I put them in a bag and I usually take them to work. So I guess our sweet potatoes are also a favorite crop or food item to make out of our garden. Okay, so I think I summed up the questions that we were asked, and it's time for me to tag some other folks. So I think I'd like to tag Cheryl Cummings and Cultivating Organic by GreenwiseJo and Superextreme Living. So it's your turn, folks. Hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.